tutorial is going to show you how to find a file on your computer to upload it to vector.com and lock it, and then trace it using open and closed paths. Remember, open paths are considered lines and closed paths are considered shapes. So we need to create a new file at vector.com, and in order to upload the file that you have selected, you're going to click on this cloud icon. So I click on that, it goes to upload. I'm going to locate it. The file that I want is on my desktop. So yours may look a little bit different, but you have to locate it, scroll through on your computer to find it in different folders, different locations, and then click on that file and click open. Okay, so this is the basic drawing that I created, my rough from. It doesn't have the text in it, which is okay because I'm going to add that later. Once you have uploaded, and this is really important, you need to lock that layer. So the layers panel here shows you all of the different elements that you have created. Right now, I've just uploaded this image, and so what I'm going to do is click on this lock button. And what that does now is it allows me to keep it in place even if I accidentally clicked it and moved it. Another thing that you could do is with it unlocked, you can select and bring the opacity down a little bit. So if I drop the opacity just to fade it a little bit, if I'm using a black line, now it'll show up better. So again, I use the opacity to lower the clarity of that image, so it makes it easier to trace. And I'll click the lock again. Then I'm going to choose the pen tool. And so again, what I'm going to do for this one is make a series of open and closed paths. The first one that I want to do is to make a closed path. And I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so I have a better, maybe not quite that much, but have just a better visibility here. So I'm going to start on the edge of my document, and I'm just simply for this one going to create a shape that is really a silhouette. So it all traced, and what I'm going to do for this particular shape, also known as a closed path, is I'm going to take the border off of it, and I'm going to add color to it. So the eventual image, right now, I'm just going to create it where it's gray, and that's going to be the base color for my work. So that's as I look at it too, I'm going to go in and zoom in and see if there are some areas that I need to clean up. Like this obviously is not going to be a very good knuckle, right? So if I use the pen tool, if I double click on that shape, I can then go in and select the individual points and edit them. So if I want to change this one just a little bit, and then press Command or Control, I can change those up just a little bit, just to give them a little bit more of a rounded feel. That's totally fine. So I'll go through and just edit all my points and make sure that everything looks good. Sometimes they're off just a little bit, and that's, sometimes that's okay. Sometimes you want it more precise. It just sort of depends on, how perfect you want it and how precise you want your image to be. Okay, so I have now created what is my base layer, which in this case is just going to be gray for right now. So I'm going to go up to this in my layers panel, and I have the image in the background, right? And that's on the bottom layer. And then for path, I'm going to double click on that, and I'll call that just the solid hand shape. And then what I'm going to do is to hide that. So I'll move on to my next one. Because what I want to do for this one is now add lines. Um, and just to make the important lines in here, some of the contours, so where these lines come in, um, and and create the fingers and the overlaps and those sorts of things. So I could do that by redrawing. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. And I will need to create a series of open paths here because I don't necessarily need them all to be connected into a shape or a closed path. Okay, from this point, now what I need to do is to group all of these lines together. So you can see that all of these paths are here in the layers panel. If I click and drag across all of those, and then right click and choose group, now all of them are grouped. Okay, and it's going to show up as a grouped layer within a folder. Okay, that's a lot easier to edit now. So if I click on here, I'm able to see that. Okay, so if I show my solid hand shape and I show the lines that I've drawn, now I've got those. Okay, I'm going to hide that hand shape again. And this time, what I'm going to do is go in and start creating black shadows. So these are going to be the areas that really kind of define the 3D nature of this piece. So again, I'm going to use the pen tool to do that. And I'll zoom in right here and start with the finger. And so I can click on the existing path that's there and then um, create my new path that I want here. And this time I've created a closed path. And what I'm going to do here, instead of leaving it an outline or a border, I'm going to remove the border and I'm going to click on color. And for this one, I'm just going to drag this all the way down until I get everything as dark as possible. Okay, so I've got that. Now I'll move on to some of these other shadows and begin to create these exact using that same process. I'm just tracing these shadows that I've already put in here, but um, I'm just making them really simple, right? And again, I'm just going to turn that into the filled closed path, right? And again, just bringing this up. So now I'm going to make these shadows really pronounced. And I'll just keep doing that over and over until I'm happy with the result and how it looks. Okay, I've gotten it mainly traced, and what I've decided to do here is to group all of these together. And you can see that I mean, they're all closed paths, but there are different properties to each of them. So some of these have a fill, some of these actually have a fill and a stroke or a border. And so what I want to do is actually make them all the same. So I'm just simply going to select all of them. I'm going to right click and group, and then I'm going to choose the background color for these. And for some reason, oh, you know why that's not working? Let's ungroup. And then what I'm going to do is to hide this other group, which is all of those lines, right? And I'm going to select them, and then I'm going to choose my background, which is going to be color. All right. Now, I'm also going to group them all together. So now we've got two groups, and this one, if I double click on it to give it a name, I'm going to call this shadow. This group is going to be called line, and I'm going to reveal it. And what happened along the way is I hid it, so I'm actually going to put the border back in there, and I'm going to unhide my solid hand shape like that. And so instantly now I've got a better sense of what this potentially could look like, right? And if I hide that background image, now I really get to see just the darkness of the shadows come up. However, it looks a little bit strange to have that on a white background. So the next thing that I'm going to do is to put a black background on it. And I'm just going to choose this rectangle. I'm going to start up here in the corner. I'm going to drag it across, and instantly everything is hidden. Well, that's because this rectangle path is at the very top. So what I need to do is to click and drag it down to the bottom. Okay, so now I have a better idea of how it's going to look. So what I can do now is go into these areas that might need a little bit of refinement, because I could keep it sharp angled, but that doesn't really look very organic, which doesn't look very much like hands, right? So if I double click on one section, you'll see that these anchor points pop up. If I want to do a quick rounding of those corners, if there's a little circle that shows up on the inside of that corner, if I just click and drag that a little bit, it's going to round it. And I can do that for each of those depending on how round I want it. Okay, and so now that's not quite as sharp of an angle, and that's going to look better. So I'm going to continue to refine it, but this is in essence how you trace different shapes in Pixlr. Or sorry, not in Pixlr. This is how you trace different shapes in vector.com to create open paths and closed paths. And then you can either add the fill color or not, depending on whether or not you want a line or a shape.